Welcome to Kickass Radio, hosted by Jo Sainsbury, founder of Kickass Women. Join Jo over the next hour as she shares stories and conversations that are both inspiring and empowering. Having spent over 30 years in the corporate sector, Jo Sainsbury kicked off her heels and became a coal train driver working in the rail and mining industry. It has been her goal ever since to empower and support women who are considering a career change into an industry role, making the transition as smooth as possible. Jo is a walking, talking success story of how taking the plunge into industry can open up a world of opportunity. And you can do it too. If you're a woman working in industry or considering a career change, this is the radio station for you. Let's get into this episode of Kickass Radio.
Hey there, Glo-getters. Welcome to the Kickass Radio Show. Hope you've had an awesome week and you're winding down to the weekend. So, first and foremost, Australia Day was acknowledged and celebrated by Australians this week. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to them and their cultures and to the elders past and present. I'm streaming to you today from the Big Smoke of Brisbane, our capital city of Queensland, otherwise locally known and affectionately referred to as Bris Vegas. I've called the sensational boutique Emporium Hotel my home for the week, and I thought no better place to stream the show than from the amazing view from the rooftop. From the initial entrance right up to the iconic rooftop, and at every turn in between, each curated detail and handcrafted touch creates a sensory symphony that is, I know, going to leave a lasting impression and the want to return to stay, if not just for the visual escape. Here this week, I wanted to bring to your attention a very common act that you yourself might have been partial to or experienced, and I'm referring to the tall poppy syndrome. It's a known phenomenon. It's not new, and it impacts persons of all genders in a range of domains. While you may not be familiar with the tall poppy syndrome, it is a common issue in most workplaces and business circles. The misconception that there is a limited amount of success to go around fuels tall poppy syndrome. If someone has secured a slice of the pie, then there is less pie to go around. We resort to cutting others down to protect our slice of success, harming the potential growth of those around us. Tall poppy is an Australian cultural term that refers to people who stand out for their high abilities, enviable qualities, and or their visible success. But standing out, in this case, isn't viewed positively. In a society that prides itself on egalitarian principles, rising above the pack is considered antisocial and countercultural. Tall poppies generate hostility and elicit a host of undermining behaviours to bring them down a peg or two. Now, this compelling desire to cut high achievers down to size is called the tall poppy syndrome, or you may know it as the imposter syndrome. Australians may have put a label to this phenomenon, but to some extent it exists everywhere. In the workplace, the tall poppy syndrome is the desire to pull down a successful standout colleague and co-worker. Tall poppy syndrome can occur within any organisation, company or business. It is commonly associated with women in the workforce, but it can also impact men. In the next hour, I'll tell you a cautionary tale for the tall poppy syndrome and women leaders. You are listening to the Kickass Radio Show Kickstart, where we talk about all things women working in non-traditional roles in very varied male-dominated industries, and I tell you how it is. I'm all tongue-tied today. Today is episode 25, Tall Poppies. I'm your host, Jo Sainsbury, the Glo-getter. My background is I'm no stranger to wearing high-vis workwear, getting down and dirty in the grease and the coal dust. My passion and purpose is to reinforce confidence, support and encourage more women to kick off their heels and tap into their steel caps and to consider pursuing these non-traditional roles and careers as I share my knowledge, career experiences and understanding of the industries. So here we are on the radio show. A big hello to my listeners throughout Australia and g'day to all our listeners in the US. I hope we can keep you in good company over the coming hour. A huge shout out to all the women working out on track and on site today, all over the world. Stay safe and have a fantastic day or night shift. And this might also be a good time to mention that the radio show does and may contain adult language. Let's get into it. So, like we were saying, we're talking today about the tall poppy syndrome. Now, some of you, as we said, may not be aware of this. Some have probably fell victim to it. So, in our society that values praise and recognition, being an achiever is ironically has its downside. There is a tendency for some to criticise those who stand out, and that's what we call the tall poppy syndrome, a trend which cultural observers believe is killing morale. Now, the point of cutting down a tall poppy in the original Australian context is to keep the flower's height uniform. Over time, the Aussie slang has come to mean cutting down high achievers who stand out in a field of mediocre performance. The expectation is that poppies should grow together. If one grows too tall, it's cut down to size. So, who is a tall poppy? The term has slowly gained traction in the modern workplace and within business circles. Not only does the tall poppy syndrome entail harsh criticism of any performer, it also means celebrating the downfall of someone whom many might consider to be a cut above the rest. Someone who thinks and acts differently from most workers, or someone who might even be maliciously branded by others as eccentric. This label often emanates from the envy others harbour for the tall poppy. What exactly is the tall poppy syndrome? It's the term given to the act of discrediting a person, typically a woman, who has achieved visible success. The tall poppy will become the victim of undermining and other underhanded strategies by others who are jealous of the target's achievements and elevation in their career or in their business. Now, this leads to criticism of public figures, sports stars, musicians, and actors who the public or media decide are not deserving of their success. But it also happens in the workplace and in the business world, where even co workers will often try to pull down a successful co worker and colleague. Now, this leads to criticism in another way, and one way you can look at the TPS is through the crab mentality. And I like this. It's when you put several crabs in a bucket, any of them that rise higher will be grabbed by the rest of the group and pull back down. Now, in the business and social landscapes, this translates as if I can't have it, neither can you. So, here are some of the little telltale signs of the TPS in the workplace. Employees who feel they are being judged severely for simply doing their job should look for the following signs of TPS among their co-workers, and that can include criticism over minor details, social exclusion, downplaying other people's achievements, jealousy manifested in snide and catty remarks. Now, TPS is not only a problem for women in some countries. The phenomenon was highlighted in a groundbreaking 2018 Canadian study by Dr. Rumay Billan, Women of Influence, and Thomson Reuters. In her study, The Tallest Poppy, Dr. Billan gathered information from 1,500 women and men and found that over 87% had their achievements undermined or devalued by their leaders or their peers. Over 81% acknowledged they were punished for success or had worked in an environment with hostile co-workers or management. Almost 70% reported experiencing the TPS that negatively impacted their productivity. Being cut down and devalued created a loss of trust of co-workers. Almost 60% reported feeling disengaged from their work due to the hostile actions in the workplace. And 4 out of 10 people in the workplace have seen someone being cut down and have not and did not intervene. Are you experiencing the TPS? There are different aspects of or signs of TPS in a company and a business, and many women moving up through the leadership ranks will experience some level of undermining of their efforts, being shunned or isolated in the workplace due to their success, distrust of others in the workplace who actively attempt to cut down those who succeed. There's active attempts to sabotage change initiated by a female leader, loss of self-esteem and self-confidence, fear of continued success and the negative reaction it causes. There's anxiety, stress, and changes in mental health. And there's a loss of social network within the organisation. The next question I pose is, who is guilty of engaging in cutting others down? Let's be honest, we all are guilty of that. Two categories of people in the workplace engage in cutting others down. One group includes existing leaders and management in a company. Now, these individuals feel threatened by other women moving up the leadership ladder. They use their influence and status in the hierarchy to cut down and restrict women's upward growth on their teams or within their sphere of influence. They often fail to acknowledge women's efforts on their team. And at the same time, they take full credit for positive results. And these leaders are also the first to target these up and coming team members if there is a failure or a missed opportunity. Now, the other group in the workplace engaging in cutting down others is the peer group. Now, this type of cutting is often more subtle, with whisper campaigns to damage an individual's character after a promotion or to challenge how they earned the advancement in the first place. Sometimes this is chalked up to jealousy in the workplace, but is much more significant than just one or two jealous people. It's a pervasive element that repeatedly limits exceptionalism and makes people genuinely fearful of putting their name forward to move into more senior and leadership and even management roles. Now we're asking the impact of TPS. Once established, tall poppy syndrome becomes a part of the workplace culture. It makes it more challenging to attract and retain employees or professionals. It also creates a negative reputation for the company or the business, making it harder to attract new candidates. And when people in an organisation do not want to stand out, do not want to take credit for their achievements or promote through the organisation, the business becomes stagnant. And this leads to a drop in productivity, a loss of employee loyalty, and talent leaving the organisation as soon as possible. And as with any workplace change, addressing the issues with TPS requires a systemic approach throughout the company. Training on the signs and the impacts of tall poppy syndrome and developing specific workplace policies to address the behaviour are essential. And a focus to retrain or remove employees engaging in the behaviour is also needed to change the workplace culture. Now, in recent years, TPS has unfortunately become more and more common, and it's not uncommon to see it flare up on social media in the form of trolling, and how prevalent and malicious it is. You yourself may have been victim to it. So it's important to know the signs and be able to spot the behaviours as early as possible. So I'm going to go through the top 5 most common forms of tall poppy attack in the workplace. Now, number 1 is negative comments. For the first sign that you are a victim of TPS is that negative comments are being made about you regardless of whether or not there is any truth to them. You may also find that once negative commenting starts, more than one person will spread the comments and you are in danger of becoming a source of damaging gossip. What to do? If the negative comments are not damaging your professional reputation, rise above the situation and ignore it. If you react to it, your reaction could do more damage than the gossip itself. However, if the gossip is likely to cause damage, address the situation in a professional manner. Make it known to your supervisor, your one-up, or the manager. Wait until you are calm before speaking to the gossiper. Call or speak to them face-to-face, whichever you are most comfortable with, but in private. Do not do it in front of a crowd. Be firm but professionally pleasant in your manner. Do not threaten them, as this will anger them and backfire into more gossip. Clearly but briefly express that you are aware of the gossip and expect it to cease immediately. It may help to draft out what you want to say beforehand. And ask pleasantly for an apology and offer the chance to put the situation behind both of you. Most people will apologise, accept it, and mean your acceptance. And then follow up with them a day later. Tell them how pleased you are to have cleared the issue up and how much you look forward to making and moving on to a valuable working relationship with them. Now, number 2 is the backhanded comment. Or compliment, sorry, the backhanded compliment. And these are similar to the negative comments, but are really sugar-coated insults. They are often snide or sarcastic compliments with a double-edged meaning. However, sometimes people will give you compliments that mean only to be humorous, but still hurt. What to do in this case? If you're sure this isn't a case of attempted humour and the complimenteur is trying to undermine you, respond pleasantly, but if necessary, in ways that can diffuse their attacks. So, for example, if the compliments are repeatedly about how much you must spend on clothes, the undermining factor, you are a spendthrift clothes source, try diffusing it by thanking them and saying you simply have a great eye for bargain sales. It's none of their business what you spend on clothes. It's your money, after all. But the bargain approach will knock out the foundations of their attack. Number 3 is excessive flattery. Everybody loves praise, but excessive flattery can make you uncomfortable and suggests a taint of dishonesty in the workplace relations. You may find that women who are threatened by you will mask themselves by flattering you excessively. They will go above and beyond the normal level of compliments, and this can sometimes be their way of throwing you off guard and gaining your trust so that you're no longer a threat for them. Oh, yes, and men do this too. It's like the old saying, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. What do? Don't fall for it. But then you didn't anyway, did you? Respond pleasantly, but don't descend into matching them in exaggeration. Remember that if they continue to flatter, it is more damaging to their reputation than yours, as long as you don't buy into it. And number 4 is social media attacks, the trolling. Now, if you start being attacked on social media, whether by people you know or anonymous posters, you may very well be a tall poppy victim. And this is quite common form of attack as social media allows people to hide behind anonymity in trolling or attacking you. And another form of social media attack is ostracism, where co-workers will block you from their Facebook, Twitter, or any other social media feeds as a way to isolate you. Ostracism may hurt, but it is their personal right to block you, and you need to use the block function strategically yourself anyway. What do we do in these cases? Block any attackers and those who isolate you. That's what the block function is for. While you might be tempted to get into a social media war, unless you're a public commentator who sees that as part of your role, it will simply burn up your valuable time and energy. If the attacks descend into threats to your life or safety, then you must report them to the police and to the social media operators. And the last one, it's the biggest one, number 5, is the jealousy. While there have been a number of reasons provided as to why tall poppy exists, it ultimately all comes down to jealousy. People find it hard to be happy for others who are more successful or those who have the potential to be more successful. And it doesn't matter if they work together or are simply in the same social group. They could work in completely different fields, but there will always be some level of jealousy. It's an unfortunate side of human nature. Okay, let's take a little break and we'll listen to a tune, and I'll be back with you soon.
Hi, I'm Jo Sainsbury, founder of Kickass Women. As a woman working in industry, I want to share my knowledge and experience and industry know-how to support you if a change in your life is what you are looking for. Join me on my radio show, Kickass Radio, every Friday morning at 10 a.m. across Australia or on Thursday afternoon at 5 p.m. in the US. What are you waiting for? Go on, get your glow on.
Okay, thanks for tuning back in. Now, we're going to have a little cautionary tale for tall poppies and female leaders. Australia may have put a label to this phenomenon, but to some extent it exists everywhere, like I said, and others may know it of the imposter syndrome. In the workplace, the tall poppy syndrome is the desire to pull down a successful standout colleague. At a macro level, it is the gleeful reporting of a prominent business figure's downfall. Given the relative lack of female CEOs, their gender alone makes them standouts and targets of the TPS. And in some cases, we set them up for it by holding them up as bigger than life, as superwomen who will accomplish the unimaginable. Now, there's a couple of examples I'm going to run through. The fall of Elizabeth Holmes, who was the CEO of Theranos, is one example of TPS at work. Now, Miss Holmes was lauded as a golden icon of Silicon Valley by garnering a multi-billion valuation for her company, promoting an exciting new technology and promising to deliver on it. Now, with her signature black mock turtleneck and Stanford dropout status, one couldn't help but think of another Silicon Valley sensation who had revolutionized a few industries. But Miss Holmes is not Steve Jobs. She is not a precocious, cheeky young man. She is a confident, attractive young woman. In an industry known for its young male mavericks, she is one of a very few women who have reached a top leadership position in a high-profile company. And unlike some of her male counterparts who have also faced legal sanctions and scandals, she has not been able to escape the annihilation of her reputation. Instead, it is with enthusiasm that she is being chopped down by the media for her failure to deliver on her promised revolutionary technology and possibly for being a perpetrator of fraud. Now, another example is Marissa Meyer, another standout as a young, attractive woman in the tech industry who was also elevated to star status when she stepped up for the CEO role at Yahoo. After so many of her predecessors had failed, enormous hopes that became expectations raised her up under a spotlight. Now, Miss Meyer, often referred to as the embattled CEO, has been cut down because of her decisions that didn't pay off, like her billion-dollar acquisition of Tumblr, her insistence in staying with search services though it was being outperformed by competitors, and ultimately because she did not turn around Yahoo. Now, all leaders make mistakes. It just comes with the territory, and many do fail. But for women who stand out, who exude drive and independence, who enthusiastically challenge the status quo, all the things we admire in male leaders, their failures present an opportunity to pull out the poppy shears. So how can women and those in leadership roles avoid this? Successful women and female leaders know that there is a double standard in how we view and evaluate women and men. They understand that we expect women to be inclusive, collaborative, and interpersonally skilled, while the gender expectations we have of men do not include those sorts of characteristics. While Elizabeth Holmes is a bright, ambitious, driven, and has a vision, there is a little sense of collaborativeness in the way she has led her company. When she says we believe, it is clear that she means Theranos and herself. She isn't referring to a team of people. In the throes of the controversy and sanctions against Holmes and her company, her tech colleagues and her own scientific advisors haven't rallied and didn't rally to her defence or provided much in the way of support. Now, Miss Holmes may well be guilty as accused, but the enthusiastic chatter about her pending or the demise of her might not have been as vicarious if her toolkit of behavioural skills contained inclusiveness and engagement of her colleagues. Now, there was a Forbes article critically that pointed out Marissa Meyer's lack of inclusiveness. From day one, Meyer could have talked less and listened more, they said. She could have taken the time to learn before acting. She could have mended fences rather than building walls. She chose to pontificate, posture, and spin rather than listen, learn, and understand. She has also been blamed for micromanaging, non-collaborative decision-making, and bringing down employee morale. Now, all of these are related to a lack of inclusiveness and engagement, behavioural skills vital to leadership success. particularly for a woman who is leading a company in crisis. Now, some female CEOs have managed to avoid the poppy clippers despite the company challenges facing them and the spotlight that illuminates them. Mary Barra is another great example, given the formidable task of turning around GM, General Motors, and steering it out of crisis, is known for her inclusive leadership style. With her listening skills and approachability, she gains diverse input before making decisions. Ms. Barra has assembled work teams, broken down silos, and promoted collaboration across the whole organisation. There was Meg Whitman of HP, tasked with reinventing a company in crisis that included a dysfunctional board, instability at the top, and a scandal-dogged former CEO, is described as a hard-driving, no-nonsense leader, but is also known for her repeatedly giving credit to people for their ideas and praising their successful execution of them. She collaborates with her direct reports in project planning and is noted to have a sense of humour, showing her humanity. The cautionary tale I mentioned earlier is, women who lead do stand out, but the ones who are successful are collaborative, inclusive, and make themselves approachable and relatable. They avoid the sharp clippers that stand at the ready to cut down tall poppies. Consider your behavioural skills. Okay, let's hear a quick word from one of the show's sponsors.
Hi Glo-getters, we're Brenjo's Earth Moving, a professional earth moving business specialising in a range of infrastructure works across a variety of industries, located in Mackay, Queensland. Here at Brenjo's, we're a family-owned company backed by an incredible team. We've seen firsthand the incredible benefits that come from promoting and supporting a diverse workplace. We're so proud to be sponsoring Kickass Radio and Kickass Women's Mission to support women entering into non-traditional roles and careers.
Okay, we're on the downhill run. So now I'm going to tell you how I overcame my fear of the TPS. Have you ever shared a success, perhaps a project that went well at work, a promotion, an award, or secured a new position, only to be met with an unkind or dismissive reaction? Seeking solace on the internet, I stumbled upon a report on this very topic. Written by CGU last year, the report had some interesting findings. 53% of Australians are dreamers, people who have considered starting a business or side hustle in the last 5 years. 34% of us feel unable to act on our ambitions. Only 6% of Australians have acted on their ambition and have started their own business or side hustle. Now, more specifically, 68% of Australians believe that Australia has a culture of negativity towards ambition, with nearly 7 in 10 Australians surveyed reporting that they don't talk about their ambitions for being labelled a bragger. So given this finding, it's no wonder so many of us are afraid of being the tall poppy. When there's an expectation that we should all grow together, it doesn't pay to stand out from the crowd, to be the one who's doing the work that others wish they were doing. And while this culture impacts both men and women, it has a greater impact on women in a world that still isn't comfortable with female success. The trope of the ambitious woman remains one which haunts the successful. An ambitious or successful woman is an unlikable woman, a selfish woman, and one who's not thinking about her community. While we expect men to advocate for themselves, fundamental to femininity is the expectation that women are focused on the collective. Behaviours or events that contradict this, even if the woman is being celebrated for her work with the community, that makes us uncomfortable. And this is further reinforced in our language, as many adjectives to describe success are heavily gendered. And the only reason why the girl boss hashtag has been created is because boss is still seen as an inherently masculine term. Why else would we need to put a female term in front of the word to apply it to women's work? Now, combine with that the negative stereotypes around age, which continue to make it harder for young people to be taken seriously. Not an easy spot for a young woman to be. So, as successful, ambitious women, what can we do to manage the TPS? Chatting with a friend and mentor who's kicked some wonderful goals in her career, I was given some great advice, and that being, reflect on your values and why you're doing what you do. Awards and recognition are never at the front of our minds when we're sending that umpteenth email, which will be ignored. When we're stressing about deadlines or how many people are going to turn up to our events. When we're putting in all the work behind the scenes, the stuff that isn't Instagrammable and which makes up the foundation for the success. We do those things because we're driven by passion, by a greater sense of purpose, a want to contribute to our field or to give back to the community. And it's not to say that it won't still hurt if people don't show up or don't celebrate our wins with us. Of course it does. We're only human. But as much as possible, let's remember why we started. Remember our vision. Surround ourselves with people who love and support us unconditionally. But most of all, stand by your success. You've earned it. Okay, that's a wrap for our Toolbox Talk. And we'll hear from another one of the show's outstanding sponsors, and we'll be back to get our Take 5 tips.
Hey Glo-getters! Did you know that Jo Sainsbury is a published author for her book High Heels to High Vis and has been named an Amazon #1 bestseller? Telling the story about Jo's transition from the corporate sector into industry, High Heels to High Vis acts as a guide for women who are considering a non-traditional role and career. High Heels to High Vis is available for purchase online at all leading bookstores, including Amazon, Dimex, Waterstones and eBay.
Rightio. So here are your Take 5 tips to kick off your heels. Number 1 is, next time you are experiencing jealousy or any of the signs that we talked about, see it as a positive signal that you are making it. Number 2 is always remember to not take the bait. Don't engage in it. Number 3, stay calm, smile and walk away. Then if necessary, plan a response that is appropriate, calm and professional. Number 4, keep growing even taller. You're a clever poppy. And number 5, let's help each other grow. And lastly, here's your safety affirmation. You cannot strengthen one by weakening another. Okay, our closing out now. We've talked about what do we do? The necessary mentality change for TPS. So Benjamin Franklin, the president of the United States Steel Corporation, gave us the best advice. He said, you cannot strengthen one by weakening another, which I just gave you as a safety affirmation, and you can't increase the height of a dwarf by cutting off a giant's legs. So to end the tall poppy syndrome, we must understand that comparisons are unnecessary and counterproductive. We are all different and shine differently. We also need to understand that we all have limitations and that it is not necessary to get to where others arrive. Everyone must seek their way to happiness, not success. We must feel grateful for diversity instead of seeing it as a danger. Only when we make that change of mentality on a personal and social level, we can let each poppy grow at its own pace and get where it wants to go. So in order to diminish tall poppy syndrome, remember your own success is not limited by what someone else has achieved. We can bake our own pie. Isn't that what we creatives do? Identifying and creating new opportunities. To add to the metaphor, the more people who turn inward and make their own pies, the greater demand for pie or for creative work. If anything, the success of those around you increases your own ability to succeed, not limit it. Let's help each other grow. Perhaps we need to consider how we become brave enough to stand tall, weather the challenges, always accept responsibility for our actions, learn and move forward. I also wonder how we can support those who are growing to be tall poppies, our future generation of leaders. Do we give them opportunities to shine? Perhaps we can all work to be more collaborative, inclusive, at making ourselves approachable and relatable. The leaders who role model these approaches, who encourage, open doors and nurture others, I respect hugely. As always, I really appreciate you guys giving me your time to listen to the radio show. You can find more information on this episode in the show notes or on my social media pages, either on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. And be sure to tune in again next week. Reach out and follow me on my Kickass Women or Jo Sainsbury social media pages if you haven't already. And I would really love to hear from you guys. So show some love for Kickass Radio Show by leaving me a review on BBS Radio Network at bbsradio.com/kickassradio. Or you can send me an email at jody, Jody, at kickasswomen.com.au. So to learn more about transitioning into a non-traditional role, tune in to Kickass Radio Show. Well, that's all for today's show. Thanks for your company and for listening to Kickass Radio. It's not goodbye, but see you later. Stay safe and well. Go crush it. Keep in touch, POSComms. Go on. Get your glow on. Become a glow-getter.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Kickass Radio, where we kick goals and deliver empowering conversations for women. Want to hear more from Kickass Women and Jo Sainsbury? Visit the Kickass Women website or follow Kickass Women on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. See you on the next episode of Kickass Radio.